We seem to live in a world that normalizes, if not glorifies, the idea of having a vice, of being addicted to something, of having some sort of something to help you take the edge off or feel creative or be able to relax at night or something like that. But my friends, this is simply another way that we're utilizing something to balance out something that is unbalanced. Okay, so just like I've talked about in other videos, where say you have the fire element, and the fire element is related to your passion, your energy, your ability to move forth and create and do what you need to do. Say you don't have that energy, and so you drink an energy drink or something like that. You use some sort of stimulant to squeeze that power out, whether it's there or not. That might work temporarily, but that is going to unbalance your system. You're going to get a high and then you're going to get a low. And it's not going to be this natural flow of energy that you would normally have. The reason you're using that in the first place is because you're unbalanced in some way. And what we need to recognize is how these imbalances can lead to all sort of energetic dysfunctions, all sorts of strange entities that might end up in our field, and essentially you not utilizing your power in the way that's going to help you ascend and thrive within your life. So something I want to mention about addictions is when it comes to quitting an addiction, when it comes to healing from an addiction, this is going to be, you might not have heard this perspective before, but you cannot heal from an addiction. You cannot quit an addiction. Now, let me explain. What you have to become is a totally new person. In other words, there is no going back to who you were. When you've been in that cycle long enough, the version of you that existed before that cycle, before that misalignment, before that imbalance carried out for a long period of time, before you were that identity, you can't go back to how you were. There is no going back. So what you have to do is go forward. And this is why people often fail at either quitting or staying off whatever it is that they're trying to get off of. It's because they're trying to go back to how they were. Because that in the mind is some sense of familiarity that can make you feel like, oh, remember when I didn't do this. And so maybe if I can get back to that, if I could just get back to that, if I could just go back to how that was. My friends, you can't turn back the clock. There's no way to turn back the clock. So the only way forward is forward. And that's scary for the mind because that means you have to create a version of yourself that doesn't yet exist. The trick is not to quit the substance. The trick is to become someone who is sober. Become someone who is unafflicted by whatever it is that you're afflicted by choosing not to take part in that and becoming a person, identifying yourself with a version of yourself, a new version of yourself that you're going to create that's actually going to turn that into new life, essentially, to be reborn, to go through this process. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is easy to do. It's very much not easy to do. It's a difficult process, and you're going to have to face your shadows. You're going to have to face your wounds, and you're going to have to recognize how that energetic imbalance that you've been essentially putting a band-aid on for such a period of time is going to have to surface itself. And maybe you're not going to have any energy for a period of time. Maybe you're going to be emotionally erratic for a period of time, because the reason that we get involved in addictions is to find some sort of balance for something that we might not have been able to balance ourselves. Okay? So for example, say a person experiences trauma. And in fact, like I'll tell my story of addiction because in my story of actually becoming sober, it was my addiction started from trauma, a traumatic experience that essentially led to me taking up certain substances and making a lifestyle over many years around those substances where they were very much like an integral part of my life at that point in time. Like I needed them to feel that sense of normality. And whenever I didn't have them, it was like the world was ending and I needed to have this and have that. And it was like, in order to have fun, I had to have this. In order to feel focused, I had to have this. In order to feel energy, I had to have this. But it was always this internal energetic slavery of I'm up and now I'm down, and now I'm up and now I'm down. And eventually my health was deteriorating. Eventually, I was doubting everything I was doing in my life because I was looking at it like this can't be real because I'm cheating, right? I'm using this substance, I'm using this effect to actually like make myself do this, and I couldn't do it without it, so I'm incapable of doing anything. This is the trap a lot of people fall into because they think, man, I want to heal. I want to overcome this, and they try to look back to how they were before. You don't exist anymore how you were before. And that's the pill that you have to swallow. But another thing we have to recognize is the spirits and entities that actually get involved with us when we go down these paths. And this is another part of my story that I'd like to share because this was like a very clear indication of what I was dealing with this whole time and why it was such a difficult thing to overcome. So, eventually, when I actually got to the point where I was able to stop consuming what I was consuming, I went through really heavy withdrawals, like really heavy withdrawals, and I was like not in my right mind for a very long time. But I want to say it was the third or fourth day of me being totally sober, which I hadn't been in years prior to this. I had just gone and I went on a trip the day before to just clear my head. I went to some hot springs and I just sat in it and just felt all the waves of emotions and just kind of dealt with it. And that night, I remember coming home and I still had the substance like in my room because I sort of tricked myself into not like throwing it away, being like, I'm done with this, because I wanted to kind of trick my mind into like, no, it's not over. Like, it's right there if you need it. But then this night I came home and I knew it was still in my room. And I was like, okay, but I'm not going to do it. Like, I'm choosing to be a sober person. I'm choosing to be this new person. And I laid down in my bed and I closed my eyes. And I was just trying to breathe, trying to get into a meditative state. And I felt this dark energy, like this intense, like fear. And like, I don't even know how to describe the emotional sensations. It was just this dark despair, fear, like depression. And I opened my eyes and I saw the silhouette of a shadowy figure sitting like right on top of me because I was laying flat on my back and I saw this thing like right out in front of me, like looking back at me. And what I recognized like right at that moment was I saw this thing and I felt the energy of it. And then I looked over into the desk that I had the substance in and I was like, this is that. Like, this is what that was. And this whole time that there's been this voice in my head telling me, you can't do this without this, and you need it to do this, and you're going to feel this way if you don't have this. It was this entity that had, at some point in time, slipped into my field and started using me in order to consume this certain substance that was a certain energy that this entity could survive within. So, my friends, as soon as I saw that, I was like, whoa, like, this is not cool. Like, I don't know what this thing, well, I did. I figured out what this thing was doing here. But at the time when I was still kind of out of my mind, I was like, what's this? What's happening? Why is this thing out in front of me? And then I put the pieces together. But it made me realize, like, this thing that has been inhabiting me is not me. And these things that I'm doing that reflect this thing are not me. That's not my personality. In other words, I was like playing a role, playing a character that was not myself. And all of the energy that I was not using, that was my healthy, thriving self, was being essentially consumed by this entity, by this energy. This is what we have to recognize about addictions on the spiritual, energetic level. That when we do something to correct a balance, to bury something within the shadows, we attract beings, entities, consciousness that actually reflects a dependent state. The dependency you have is chemical, of course, it is psychological, but on the level that reflects that chemical and psychological imbalance, we have these spirits. We have these dark entities that thrive on this kind of thing, and they will be telling you, you need this, like, you can't survive without me, you need me, because they need you. And if they can get you to keep being dependent and reliant on them for whatever that substance is for you, whatever that action is for you that is imbalanced, They're going to keep siphoning your life force. They're going to keep taking from you. And this is the scary and dark and sad part about this. There will be no end to it. You will never get to a point where these entities are like, yeah, it's done, and you're free now. We're satisfied. So long as you still choose to operate in a way that they can keep taking from you, they will. They will keep taking from you. And the reason being is because this is like, I truly see this as like one of the universe's tests, if you will. Because so many people go through these experiences, and I think one of the most valuable things I actually gained from the experience of becoming sober, like as I am now, which is like honestly the greatest gift in the world. It's so amazing to get to live my life like this where I don't even have the desire to do anything. But the reason I got to this stage after pretty much most of my 20s being on and off something, and then the end of my 20s being like this full on hardcore couldn't escape it addiction that was kind of buried in certain traumas that I wasn't able to deal with at the time. Like the lesson that I gained from that was recognizing that I don't need anything outside of myself to actually take my power back, to actually come into this strength and create balance, create a healthy equilibrium without needing something to actually give me a stimulation or a buzz or to chill me out or something like that. So in overcoming this and in overcoming those entities, which those are not the only ones I was dealing with at that point in time, but to overcome those things made me recognize how powerful I am and how powerful therefore you are too, in actually essentially claiming your space. Because this is what it's about, my friends. If you can't claim your space for yourself and utilize it, something else would love to. As I've said before, your current, your energy is a very, very valuable commodity, especially for beings that reside in these lower astral planes that really don't get any of this themselves. They need this to exist. They need this to keep doing their imbalanced nonsense things because they can't cultivate the power from within. They need to take it from you. So, my friends, when you recognize your own power and your own value and you choose to become a person who honors that, you choose to become a person who sees the value in that and does not let external temptations or influences actually stifle your light and stifle your truth. What then could actually knock you off of your balance? What then could take you out of your equilibrium? Because like I've said, equilibrium and balance, it is a dynamic process. It's something that we constantly have to be working with and balancing. But when it comes to these heavier aspects of imbalance and codependency, we have to recognize why psychologically we might be in those states, but then to use those as a reflection in order to heal yourself, in order to find the parts of your aura that may have holes in them, in order to find the aspects of yourself that are not whole in themselves. This is an incredible teacher. It is an incredible opportunity for you to learn how to be whole on your own and for you to learn how you can cultivate and harness and balance your own energy without needing something outside of you. So, my friends, like I've said, this is not about going back to who you were. If you've been presented with some sort of imbalance, some sort of dependent energy within your life, what you need to recognize is this is an opportunity. This is a place where the universe, the energy, the consciousness is showing you where you need to take your power back. And I'm not saying, like I said, I'm not saying it's going to be an easy process, but it's going to be worth it. And that's what you have to recognize. The person that you can become by choosing yourself, by choosing your wholeness, by choosing your health, the person you can become far exceeds the pain that you might go through to actually overcome those trials and overcome and deal with those shadows. The word pain is the same as pay. Pain is to pay. What you're going to pay with your pain, you're going to be paying for the new version of yourself that you get to live in, the new version of yourself that you get to be. And for that, for how valuable that is, the cost associated with it is nothing. It will be hard, my friends. It was hard for me, but it was absolutely and 100% worth it. And it also gave me a deepened awareness of essentially how these, I'll put it this way. Have you ever heard the phrase, I've danced with the darkness and now I know its moves and can't be seduced? That's essentially what this is. Because, my friends, your darkness, your challenges, your troubles, your attachments, they're all ways that you're learning something. You're learning certain patterns, you're learning certain ways that things feel and how you react to them and how you respond to them. And once you've overcome those lessons, you level up. It's just as I said, you check your balance becomes level, and now it's like, I've leveled up. I can go to the next phase of this because I balanced out, right? My balance is back at zero. Like, I balanced out, and now I can go higher because you've passed that level, my friends. This is what it's all about. It's a difficult process to come back into yourself and to come back into your awareness. And this mirrors many other aspects of our life, even beyond substances and beyond addictions, because it is always about a balance. It is always a process of taking our external influences and bringing that back inside and knowing that the power is within ourselves. But the more places that we're able to do that within our lives, the more powerful we become as conscious beings and as creators. All right, my friends. So I hope that helps. With that, be whole, be well, and take care. We'll talk soon.